Hey everyone, welcome back. So in the previous video, we set up the functionality for our character's movement. We assigned our move forward and our move right events, which will drive our character's movement in game. We also set up our mouse input to control our camera, so turning and moving the camera left and right, moving it up and down as well with our lookup event here. We also set up our ability to jump for our character. So our character, in essence, is ready to be used in our game and should be playable. In this video, we will set up the game mode, which we will use to assign our game's default classes, and more specifically, the default pawn class, which is the character or pawn that is used by players. Essentially, that's what I'm getting at. So let's continue. One thing I wanted to mention that I didn't do in the previous video, it's always a good habit whenever working with blueprints to compile and save your blueprints often. So I just wanted to point that out really quickly. So let's, if you haven't already, go ahead and click the compile button up here to finalize our blueprint script. And it says we are good to go. Then go ahead and save to make sure that we save all of our changes. So with that, let's close the character blueprint as we're not going to be working in it at the moment. So let's close it. And inside the content browser, I'm going to right click in an empty space and create a new blueprint. So let's go up to blueprint class here. And it's going to give us the pick parent class dialog box. Go ahead and select the game mode. You can see it says game mode defines the game being played, its rules, scoring, and other facets of the game type. So select game mode. And it's going to create a new asset for us and ask us to enter a name. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's just call it my game, like so. And then double click on it to open it up. Now when you open it, mine opened up off screen actually. Let me bring it on screen here. When you open it, you'll be presented with a very similar looking interface to what we did inside the character blueprint. We will be on the viewport tab. Now 99.9% of the time, you're not going to need to add components like we did with our character blueprint when working inside of a game mode. For our purposes, all we're really focused on is the class defaults. So make sure that class defaults is selected. And then over in the details panel over here on the right, towards the bottom, you can see we have a bunch of settings that we're not going to worry about right now. All we're really worried about are the class defaults and the classes. So you can see at the top, there's a setting for default pawn class. Currently, it's using a default pawn that comes default with the editor. We want to change this to use our own. So go ahead and click the drop down and then find that character BP, so the character blueprint that we created. So select that. And again, compile and save from the toolbar. So compile and save. And then close the game mode blueprint. That's all we need to do for now. So once we've closed that, we've got our game mode set up, but we haven't told our project to use it yet. There's a couple different ways that we could do this. Let's go to settings first from the toolbar up here at the very top. And at the very top, we have world settings and project settings. Let's go to world settings first. So select world settings. And over in the far right, over in the details panel, a new world settings panel opens. And this allows us to change various settings per level. So right now, there's a game mode section and there's a game mode override, currently set to none. This will override whatever the default game mode that is currently assigned to this project as a whole, which we will do in a moment. This will override that for this particular level. So for the sake of practice, let's just go ahead and do that. We're going to set it up as the default as well, but we'll do it here as well. So click the drop down, go ahead and choose the My Game game mode blueprint that we just created a moment ago. And you can verify that your settings have been applied. Go and click the arrow here next to selected game mode. And you can see our default pawn class is set to use our character blueprint. Now this does this for this level. If we were to open another level, it would use whatever the default game mode is and its settings. So let's set that default game mode really quickly. Let's go back up to settings. This time we're going to choose project settings. And that's going to open the project settings window. Let me pull it off so you can see it. Not dock it, but pull it off. Let's see. So we're going to go into the maps and mode section under project. And you can see towards the bottom, there's a default game mode section. Yours may not be expanded. I may have been doing something in between videos where mine was expanded, but this is the section that we're only focused on right now. So the default game mode is currently set to use the engine's default game mode. Let's change that to our game mode. So we're going to use my game mode or my game here. And again, we can verify that our settings have taken effect, which it has. And because we're writing to the default engine INI, which is currently writable, we don't need to explicitly saved. Our changes have been saved for us automatically. So let's close the project settings now. And inside the level viewport here, we are ready to play and test, but we have very little room to move around. So really quickly, what I'm going to do is select this floor piece here, just left click to select it. I'm going to hit R on my keyboard to go into scale mode. And I'm going to grab this green arrow and just move it, or not arrow, but widget, and move it in this direction to give us a little bit of a platform. I'm going to grab the right one, or the red one now, and drag it down this way like so. Then I'm going to press W to enter translation mode and just kind of center this up by grabbing this green arrow, something like this. Just gives us a little bit more room to run around on our floor here. Okay, with that, I think we are ready to test it now. Let's see, hopefully everything should work. Let's hit play from the main toolbar up here. And our character spawns in. And we can control our mouse by using the mouse, or control our camera by using the mouse, excuse me. And we can also press W to run around, and S, and D, and A. And we can jump with our character as well. And we can control the camera like I mentioned, and the camera follows around. So everything's looking good. Everything is working as expected. So before we wrap this video, there's one other thing that I wanted to cover really quickly, as we're about 7 minutes in, and this would have been a short video otherwise. Camera control. So right now, if I move the camera up or move the mouse up, my camera pitches up. If I move my mouse down, the camera kind of pitches down. If you would like to invert your controls, you could do that. If I hit escape here, you could do that inside of the project settings and the input section under engine here, all the way down on our look up and mouse Y settings. I believe I mentioned this as well as we were setting these up. If I set this to 1, that will essentially invert our controls. So moving up would actually move me down, and moving down would actually move me up. So if you prefer those controls, you could set that in here. But I figured I would show you a quick and easy way to kind of have a toggle for this inside the editor, if you'd like to change it inside the editor and play with those settings. So let me close the project settings. Traditionally, you would probably have a pause menu where you could set this in-game and have those changes take effect. But what we're going to do is just create a simple way of testing it inside the editor so that inside the details panel here, I could click an option and change that setting without having to go into the project settings and change it. So let's do that. To do that, let's open the character blueprint folder here. So we're going to open that up. Double click on it to open it up. And what we're looking for, let's find our mouse input section here. And all we're really worried about is this lookup section. We don't really care about turn because we're not going to invert those, although you could if you'd like, using this same method. So let's focus on these for a second. So I'm going to mouse wheel in, and I'm going to right click on this executable pin here. Just right click and select break link to add controller pitch. So that will break the connection. I'm going to do the same thing for access value. So now that those are broken, we can add a check here to see if our lookup access event here should be inverted. So one other thing to mention really quickly, with comments, this is pretty handy with comments. You can move a comment block so you don't have to actually select all nodes like so and then move the nodes. With comments, you can move them as a single unit like this. So that's kind of handy as well as making comments. So I'm going to move this down just a little bit, give us a little bit more room. Going to stretch out our comment block just a little bit and move this add controller pitch input over just a little bit. And what we're going to do is run a check, a true or false check, to see if this should be imported or inverted. So let's hold B on our keyboard and left click in the graph. That's going to create a branch node for us, and that's going to give us that true or false. So let's connect the executable here, left click and drag to the branch. And then for the true, we'll connect to our current add controller pitch input. I'm going to move it up like so. I'm going to hit Control C and Control V to copy that because we're going to need 2 instances of this. And then we're going to connect the false, like so. And let's stretch our comment block down so it's encompassing it. Now, for the false, we're currently going to grab our access value here and just plug that right in because that's our current setting. We don't want to change it. But for true, if we want to invert it, what we're going to do, let's drag off our access value again. To get that inverted value, all we're going to do is multiply. So let's drag off and search for multiply. We're going to do a multiply float by float. And what we're going to do is for that value here, let's change this to -1. That will invert whatever our value is here. So then we can plug that into our value for our controller pitch input. Now we still need to add our variable here that's going to be either true or false. To do that, let's right click on the condition here and promote to variable. And inside the components window over here, or my blueprint window, it's asking us to name this new variable that we added. So let's just call this invert mouse control. So invert mouse control. I'm going to move this up in the graph as well so we can see it. The next thing that we'll do to finish up, inside the My Blueprint window, you can see there's a little closed eye icon here. If we click this, the eye will open and it will be yellow. This will let us edit this variable inside the level editor. So it will become a publicly editable variable that we can change inside the editor. It's currently yellow because it's missing a tooltip. So when I mouse over, telling me what it does in the editor. So let's add one really quickly. So go ahead and select it. Over in the details panel, in the upper right, there's an option for tooltip. Go ahead and enter a tooltip for it. So you could say, this inverts the mouse controls, like so. And when you hit enter, you can see that the green eye, or the eye has been changed to green, letting us know that we now have a tooltip for it as well. So let's compile and save. And then let's close the character blueprint. Okay, the final thing that we need to do before we wrap up this video is test this. The way we could test this actually is inside the content browser. Let's grab our character blueprint here. Let's just left click and drag him into the level like so. And now what we have is a player start and our character blueprint. But what we want to do is automatically possess or take control of this character when the game begins. So to do that, we can kill our player start. So go ahead and select our player start and hit delete, as we are going to be spawning in as this particular character here. So I'm going to move him over just a little bit so he's centered up. And with him still selected, over in the details panel, if we scroll down a little bit under the default section, there is our new Boolean variable that we can toggle on and off to invert our controls. So if I leave it checked and I hit play in the editor, we're going to spawn in as a new character. First of all, there's one other thing I forgot to do. It said stop really quickly. We need to tell this character blueprint here that we automatically want to possess it. So let's do that really quickly. Let's search inside the details panel here. Let's search for possess. So possess, and you can see it says auto possesses player. Currently it's disabled. We want to enable this, and it's going to ask us for a player to possess. Now by default in a single player game, you're always going to be player 0. So go ahead and select player 0. And this will let this character know that we want to possess it with player 0. So now if we hit play in the editor, we will possess that character. And as we move the mouse down, we are looking up. As I move the mouse up, we are looking down. If I hit escape and I go back to the details panel and I clear our search and I scroll down and find our invert mouse controls and I uncheck that. Now when I play in the editor and I use my mouse, when I move the mouse up, I am moving up, and when I move the mouse down, I am looking down. So we are set. That's actually going to cause us to pause here, In the next video, well, actually, let me recap really quickly what we've done here. We've created our game mode. We've assigned a default pawn to use, our player character here. We've also added a toggle to invert our mouse. So we are set to move around. We need to do one more thing regarding our controls. That's set up the ability to control the camera with the right stick of a gamepad, because currently only our left stick works. If you recall, over in the Edit, Project Settings, Input, if we recall, we've assigned gamepad left thumbstick Y-axis and gamepad right thumbstick, or gamepad left thumbstick X-axis to our move forward and move right. So whenever we call move forward and move right, the left thumbstick will automatically work. We don't have to do anything extra. Those just come along for the ride. It's that right thumbstick that we have to worry about and set up inputs for, which we haven't done. We've only done our turn and we've only done our lookup. In the next video, we will do our turn rate and our lookup rate so that we can get functionality with our right thumbstick, as well as adding touch controls. So we don't have touch controls right now either. So we'll do that in the next video. So thank you guys for watching, and we will see you in that video.